Welcome back to the deep dive. We are jumping right into something that affects pretty much everyone who shops. It governs millions, maybe billions of transactions every single day.
Yeah, it's huge. And it's one of the most, well, let's say successful psychological traps in modern commerce. It's everywhere.
Exactly. And today we're really challenging that core belief, that ingrained idea that we actually save money when we buy something that's on sale.
And the central idea, the premise that's going to frame this whole deep dive today, it's actually um, startlingly simple when you hear it, but it's powerful.
Okay, lay it on us.
If you don't buy something that's on sale, you are, just by definition, keeping 100% of your money. You haven't spent anything. You've saved everything you might have spent.
It sounds obvious when you say it like that, but it really does flip the script on how we think about shopping and consumption, doesn't it?
Completely. It cuts through all the noise.
So our mission today, what we want to do in this deep dive is move beyond, the usual budgeting tips like cut your lattes or whatever. That's not what this is about.
All right, we're going deeper.
We're going to try and unpack the whole cognitive and emotional landscape of retail sales. We'll dissect what savings truly means from a financial standpoint.
Which is often not what the sticker says.
Exactly. And then the really practical part, we want to give you a kind of philosophical toolkit, a set of actionable strategies, internal ones, to help you reclaim ownership over your spending.
It's about building self-command in your financial life, taking back control from the marketing messages.
Yeah, financial self-command. I like that. So where are we drawing this from? What's the source material look like?
Well, we've synthesized insights from sources looking at financial discipline, definitely, but also behavioral economics, the psychology behind why we buy.
Okay, so the why.
The why, exactly. And importantly, the practical application of philosophical ideas, things like temperance, but applied to our modern consumer world.
Temperance, like the old Stoic virtue. How does that fit in?
It fits perfectly, actually. The core goal here isn't just about being frugal, pinching pennies. It's about achieving genuine autonomy. Freedom, really.
Freedom from what?
Freedom from the external noise, the constant marketing bombardment. Freedom from those internal compulsions, the I need this now feeling that sales often trigger.
Okay. So by resisting those urges, you free up mental energy.
Mental bandwidth, absolutely. And you make sure your money, your actual capital, is serving your true long-term values, not just reacting to a temporary price drop. It's about aligning your spending with your life goals.
All right, let's really dig into this central paradox then, because let's be honest, we've all done it. I know I have.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone falls for it sometimes.
You buy a new gadget, maybe a piece of clothing, whatever it is, and the first thing you say, maybe even just to yourself, is how much you saved. It was 40% off. I saved $50.
That's the knee-jerk justification, isn't it? It makes the spending feel okay.
Responsible even.
Right. But we need to nail down what saving actually means here, what really constitutes a saving in this context. Okay, so the fundamental mistake, the core error in thinking, is confusing a reduction in the asking price with an increase in your actual wealth. They're not the same thing at all.
Explain that a bit more.
When you buy something, any transaction, you're exchanging your money, your currency, for a good or a service. You haven't kept money. You haven't earned money. You've simply managed to spend less than the seller originally wanted you to spend.
Okay, so the seller got less, but I still spent.
Exactly. A true saving, particularly when we're talking financial discipline, means capital you've retained, money you still have in your account.
So let's use that simple example. I walk into a shop, I've got $100 in my pocket or my account, whatever. If I look around, maybe I'm tempted, but I buy absolutely nothing.
You walk out with $100.
I still have the full $100. That, by your definition, is a 100% saving of the money I could have spent in there. Precisely. Now, same scenario. I have $100. I see an item. Maybe it was originally priced at $100, but hey, big red sticker, it's on sale for $50. I buy it. Okay, feel good? You get a deal.
Maybe. But what's the financial reality? You walk out with only $50 left. You are objectively $50 poorer than when you walked in. Your net worth just went down by $50.
Even though the sign screamed, save $50.
Exactly. That language is crucial. The sources we looked at really emphasize how retailers strategically use words like savings, deal, discount. They know these words tap into the part of our brain associated with being smart, prudent, with gain.
It feels good to save.
It feels very good. They're speaking the language of thrift, of frugality, but the entire purpose is to successfully steer you towards the act of spending. consumption.
Wow. So they create this environment, this whole narrative where the act of actually handing over your money feels like you're doing something financially responsible. It's almost virtuous.
It's a brilliant misdirection, honestly. A classic psychological sleight of hand. Let's stick with that specific example from the sources, the $200 shirt.
Okay, fancy shirt, marked down to $100, half price.
So a consumer sees that. They buy the shirt. What happens in their brain? It celebrates the cost it avoided. It focuses on the $100 they didn't have to spend compared to that initial $200 price.
$100 saving.
Right.
Right. But the cold, hard reality, $100 has just permanently left their bank account. Gone. Now here's the critical part. If that shirt wasn't something they truly needed, if it was an impulse buy driven purely by the discount, then they haven't saved anything.
Worse, they've effectively wasted $100. The only way you could argue there's any kind of saving is if buying that specific shirt or something very similar was an essential pre-planned purchase you were going to make anyway.
Like, my old shirt disintegrated, I absolutely need a new one today, and I budgeted $120 for it, and I found this one for $100.
Okay, then you could say you saved $20 relative to your planned necessary expense. But that's a very specific and frankly quite rare scenario compared to most sale purchases.
Most sale purchases are driven by the sale itself, not the pre-existing need.
Absolutely. And this whole illusion is propped up by something we see constantly, the MSRP, the manufacturer's suggested retail price. The MSRP, that number often seems so arbitrary. Sometimes it's crossed out next to the sale price.
And we're conditioned, subtly, to treat that MSRP figure as if it's the item's objective, intrinsic worth. It sets the stage for the entire game.
So the MSRP isn't really the real price.
Often, not even close. The MSRP is the linchpin. In behavioral economics, we call it the anchor. It's that first number thrown out there. And in many industries, think jewelry, mattresses, sometimes furniture, even some electronics. The MSRP is often significantly inflated.
Why inflate it?
Its primary purpose isn't to reflect a realistic selling price. It's to establish an artificially high reference point in your mind, the consumer's mind.
So when the discount comes, it looks huge by comparison.
Exactly. It makes the discount appear much larger, much more appealing, much more urgent than it might actually be if you knew the item usually sells for closer to the sale price anyway. It sounds like they're deliberately setting the starting point of a negotiation, but I'm not even negotiating. They just tell me the high price and then the lower one.
That's precisely how the anchoring effect works. It's a really robust finding in cognitive science, studied for decades. Research consistently shows that when you see a large initial number, the anchor, the MSRP, your brain subconsciously pegs its valuation of the item to that figure.
Even if, like, intellectually, I suspect the MSRP is nonsense.
Even then, it still has a powerful subconscious pull. So when the discount gets applied, the sheer contrast between that inflated MSRP and the lower price generates a strong, positive feeling. Little dopamine hit, maybe. It feels like you've cleverly captured value that the retailer didn't want you to have.
Like you outsmarted the system.
Yes. You feel like a savvy shopper. But let's pause here. Surely this isn't the same for everything, right? Are we saying buying, I don't know, a $5 coffee mug on sale involves the same level of manipulation as buying a $50,000 car that's supposedly marked down by $5,000? Does this anchoring bias apply across the board?
Good question. The scale is so different.
The underlying mechanism applies universally, yes. That first number always has an influence. But the emotional stakes and the function of the anchor can vary quite a bit.
How so?
With a small item, like that $5 coffee mug maybe marked down from $10, the anchor might just nudge you into buying something totally unnecessary. Oh, it's half price, why not? The financial hit is small.
Right, low-risk impulse buy.
But with the $50,000 car, that anchor, the MSRP, say it's $55,000, serves a different purpose. It's there primarily to justify the price you actually pay, the $50,000.
Ah, I see. It makes the $50,000 feel reasonable because it's lower than the $55,000 anchor.
Exactly.
You focus on the apparent $5,000 savings rather than stepping back and asking the really hard question, is this car genuinely worth $50,000 to me, regardless of the MSRP? The higher the price tag, the more critical that anchor becomes in making the final purchase price feel acceptable, even good. So the bigger the purchase, the more powerful the anchor's justification effect.
Generally, yes, because the absolute dollar amount saved looks so much bigger, reinforcing the feeling of having secured a major win.
What's really fascinating or maybe disturbing about this MSRP trap is how effectively it bypasses the question of actual utility. It shifts our focus.
Completely. We abandon that critical assessment. What do I actually need? What function does this serve? And what is that function worth to me?
Yeah.
And instead, we get caught up playing the retailer's game.
The game of comparing the sale price to the anchor.
Right.
We start thinking purely in terms of the retail equation. Is this discount percentage good enough compared to that big starting number?
Yeah.
Utility goes out the window. So the core lesson here for you listening is pretty stark then. It is. If you want to gain real command over your finances, you have to train yourself to dismiss the MSRP. See it for what it is, a marketing tool, not an objective statement of value. It's largely irrelevant data for your decision. Your focus has to shift entirely inwards, to utility.
To utility. If you find yourself buying something primarily because of the percentage discount flashing on the sign, you've basically handed control over to the retailer's psychological strategy. You're playing their game, not yours.
And the only way to achieve true saving
is non-consumption of the unnecessary. Just don't buy it if you don't truly need it, and value it independently of the sale price. That's the only guaranteed way to keep 100% of that money.
Okay, so the retailer sets the stage with that anchor, the MSRP, making the discount look really appealing. But that's just step one, isn't it?
That just gets your attention, makes the proposition feel good. But to actually get you to open your wallet, especially right now, they need more. They need to deploy emotional tactics.
Tactics designed to make sure we don't pause and think too clearly.
Exactly. To short-circuit that rational assessment we were just talking about. This is where the psychological battlefield really heats up.
Okay, the anchor makes it feel like a win. What comes next?
Urgency. They need to convert that positive feeling into immediate action, immediate cash flow for them. And how do you create urgency? You leverage powerful emotions.
And one of the biggest ones, especially today, has got to be FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Oh, FOMO is a powerhouse.
Yeah.
It's always been part of human psychology, this desire not to be left out, but the digital age, social media, targeted ads. It's amplified FOMO exponentially.
How do retailers weaponize it?
They tap into those deep needs.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the need for inclusion, for validation, maybe even for securing resources before they're gone. They do this by suggesting explicitly or implicitly that the current deal, this attractive price, is unique. It's fleeting. It might never come back.
And that triggers that internal monologue.
I'll never see this price again. Or everyone else is getting this deal. That thought creates instant anxiety, doesn't it? That kind of low-grade panic.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you have to decide now.
And that anxiety, that panic, it overrides logic. It forces you into feeling like you're making this crucial calculation under duress, under time pressure.
Even though if we stopped to think, we probably know that many deals do reappear or the item will still be available later, maybe even cheaper somewhere else.
Right. But in that moment, fueled by FOMO, the potential loss of the deal feels much heavier, much more painful than the potential loss of the money you'd spend.
That perception of loss, that's another known bias, isn't it? Loss aversion. Absolutely key. Behavioral economics shows us again and again. Humans typically feel the pain of a loss, like missing out on that amazing deal, about twice as intensely as they feel the pleasure of an equivalent gain, like the satisfaction of keeping that money in their pocket by not buying. Twice as intense.
Wow. Yeah. So retailers masterfully manipulate this inherent aversion to loss. They frame not buying the sale item as incurring a loss. The purchase, therefore, feels like a necessary defense mechanism against future regret. I'd kick myself if I missed this.
Okay, so anchoring makes it look good. FOMO makes it feel urgent and potentially painful to miss. What else is in their arsenal? This leads directly to the twin tactics, often used together. Scarcity bias and artificial urgency.
Okay. This is when we see those flashing countdown timers on websites.
Yep, the timer's ticking down the seconds until the deal expires. Or the only 3 left in stock at this price. Warnings.
Or just the classic limited time offer, banners splashed everywhere. All of these techniques are precision engineered to do one thing: interrupt your prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking part of the brain.
The part responsible for careful deliberation, weighing pros and cons, long-term planning. When you see that clock ticking down or that low stock warning, your body actually enters a mild but measurable state of physiological stress. Heart rate might increase slightly, you feel a bit pressured.
Like fight or flight, but for shopping. A mini version, yes. And that stress response demonstrably diminishes our capacity for complex analysis. It pushes us away from slow, reasoned thought and towards a rapid, emotional decision. The retailer wants you running on adrenaline, not thoughtful analysis.
Because if you stop and analyze,
You might realize you don't need it. Or you might compare prices or read reviews or just walk away. The urgency is designed to prevent exactly that kind of due diligence.
so the goal is to stop me from assessing genuine utility. The thing we just said was crucial.
Precisely. The rush of successfully beating the clock or grabbing one of the last few becomes the reward in itself. The feeling of accomplishment is tied to the act of purchase under pressure, regardless of the item's actual long-term value or necessity.
So in that moment, I'm not thinking, does this air fryer genuinely improve my life in a way that justifies $70?
Nope. You're thinking, yes, I got it, I beat the timer, I secured the resource. It's a very primal response they're triggering.
Okay, but let's be practical here for a second. If retailers are this good, this sophisticated at exploiting these, well, universal human biases.
And they spend billions figuring this out.
Right. Is it even realistic for the average person who's just trying to live their life and gets bombarded with this stuff constantly to actually fight back effectively? It sounds exhausting, like needing to be hyper-vigilant 24/7.
That's a really important practical question. And you're right, sustained hypervigilance probably isn't sustainable for most people. It is mentally exhausting.
So what's the alternative? Just give in.
No, the sources suggest the solution isn't about winning every single skirmish through sheer willpower. It's about a more fundamental shift in your posture, your approach.
A shift in posture. What do you mean?
It means moving from being constantly reactive, always deflecting the latest marketing missile, to being proactively disciplined. Having a system in place before you even encounter the temptation.
Okay, like pre-deciding your rules of engagement.
Exactly. And this is why the sources pivot here, moving from the retailer's tactics to the internal discipline of the consumer. It puts the power back in your hands.
And you're referencing that part in the sources where the author describes being able to, like, walk through Target or Costco.
Yeah, these high temptation environments full of deals.
Without feeling that compulsion to buy unnecessary stuff, no matter how big the discount sticker is.
That ability, that restraint is presented as the counterexample. And the key point is, it's probably not some innate superpower they were born with.
It's learned, developed.
It's portrayed as a developed habit, a skill. And it's rooted fundamentally in valuing intention over impulse, valuing utility over price.
How does that contrast with most people?
Well, think about how most people enter those stores. Often it's passively, maybe with a vague list, but also kind of hoping to just stumble upon a great deal. They're open to suggestion.
Yeah, browsing is a common approach.
The disciplined consumer, in contrast, enters with a very specific pre-established list or a clear purpose. And more importantly, they have an internal system of valuation that is largely impervious to the external price tags and sale signs.
They've built a kind of mental moat around their wallet. They recognize that the store environment itself is fundamentally designed to be hostile to their financial goals.
Perfect analogy, a mental moat. If you recognize that the battlefield is specifically designed to make you lose meaning, spend money you didn't intend to, then you have choices.
Like what?
Well, one choice is simply not to enter the battlefield if you don't have to. We'll definitely get more into that in Section 4 of the Practical Toolkit.
Okay, avoidance.
Or, if you do need to enter, you go in fully armored. Armored with your predetermined rules, your list, your internal valuation method.
So awareness is the first step, just knowing the game is rigged.
That awareness of the biases, of the tactics being used against you, is the absolutely essential first step. It moves you from being an unconscious participant to a conscious observer. And that awareness is the bridge.
The bridge from understanding the psychology
to actually practicing the philosophy, to developing that financial temperance we mentioned earlier. It means acknowledging the system and then choosing to operate by a different set of rules, your own internal ones.
Okay, let's formalize this idea of the internal armor. You mentioned the sources explicitly connect this kind of financial discipline to the Stoic practice of temperance. Now, when people hear Stoic, they might think, I don't know, emotionless, or just denying yourself everything.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. Stoicism and temperance within it isn't really about complete denial or suppressing emotion. It's more nuanced.
So we're not talking about financial abstinence here, like never buying anything enjoyable.
Not at all. Temperance, in the way the Stoics meant it and how it applies here, is better understood as knowing and then actively desiring only what is genuinely necessary and what is within your own ethical control.
Okay, necessary and within my control. How does that relate to resisting a sale?
Well, think about that impulse buy during a flash sale. When we feel that sudden compelling urge, I have to get it before it's gone, are we acting based on necessity? Usually not. Are we acting based on something within our rational control?
Not really. It feels like the sale is controlling us.
Exactly. We're allowing external factors, the marketing message, the artificial scarcity, The FOMO we just discussed to dictate our choices, to dictate our internal state of anxiety or desire. That's the opposite of temperance. We're letting the marketplace hijack our self-command.
Wow, okay, so viewed through that lens, resisting a sale isn't just about being frugal or saving a few bucks. It becomes bigger.
It becomes an active assertion of your own philosophy.
Yeah.
It's like you're saying internally, no, I recognize the anxiety you were trying to manufacture in me, and I refuse to be governed by it. I choose my own response.
It's an act of personal sovereignty, in a way. Precisely. And this ties directly into that powerful quote attributed to Epictetus, which the sources highlight: freedom is the prize of self-control. Freedom is the prize of self-control. How does that apply to my Amazon cart? Think about it. If your buying decisions are constantly being triggered by promotional emails landing in your inbox or those countdown clocks ticking away on a web page, are you truly financially free? No, I guess not. I'm reacting.
You're financially reactive. You're a puppet, and the strings are being pulled by marketers. The moment you successfully identify that impulse, pause and resist it based on your own values and needs.
How about the strings?
You assert your autonomy. You claim that freedom Epictetus was talking about. It's freedom from external manipulation.
And the saving in this context, it feels like it goes beyond just the money then.
Oh, absolutely. The money saved is the obvious part.
Yeah.
But the sources point towards a multi-layered saving. You're also saving something arguably even more precious because it's non-renewable.
Time, energy.
Your mental energy, your cognitive bandwidth,
Yeah.
your focus.
How so?
Think about the hidden non-monetary costs of consumption, especially unnecessary consumption. Every single item you bring into your life carries a kind of life cycle cost that goes way beyond the sticker price.
Like what?
Well, there's the time and energy spent acquiring it in the first place, researching, shopping, the transaction itself. Then there's the physical space it occupies in your home. Clutter isn't just messy. Studies show it's a constant low-level drain on mental focus and well-being.
Right. The stuff requires management.
It requires management, energy to maintain it, maybe clean it, organize it, fix it if it breaks, and eventually, time and energy to dispose of it responsibly. It's a commitment.
So by resisting buying that unnecessary thing in the first place,
You are effectively saving all that future cognitive load, all that future time. You're reducing future distraction and decision fatigue. The Stoics aimed for a life free from unnecessary entanglements, and honestly, modern overconsumption is practically the definition of entanglement.
it's like we invite these little burdens into our lives, disguised as conveniences or deals.
That's a great way to put it. Marketers desperately want you to focus only on that initial moment of acquisition, the thrill, the dopamine hit of the purchase, the perceived saving.
They don't show the thing 5 years later, dusty in the attic or broken in a landfill, ever. The Stoic perspective, or just this disciplined financial perspective, forces you to consider that longer view, to ask, 5 years from now, looking back, will this item truly have improved my life enough to justify not just the initial cost, but also all the ongoing costs of ownership, time, space, energy?
That's a much higher bar for a purchase to clear than just, is it 50% off?
A much higher bar. And that long-term assessment, that focus on genuine life improvement, leads directly to the most powerful practical technique the author developed, according to the sources.
Which is?
Valuing products based solely on your personal utility, completely divorced from whatever price tag the retailer slaps on it.
Okay, conceptually that makes sense. Ignore the MSRP, ignore the sale price. But how do you actually do that? Our brains are so wired to see the price first. How do you disconnect that number from the value you assign? It requires practice. It's a conscious mental exercise, especially at first. The sources suggest a two-step process when you encounter an item, especially one that's supposedly on sale.
Step 1.
Deliberately, actively ignore the sale price, the discount percentage, and especially the MSRP. Blank them out in your mind.
Okay.
Pretend they don't exist for a moment.
Okay, easier said than done, but I get the idea. Step 2.
Ask yourself very honestly two related questions. First, what is the genuine practical utility of this specific item to me in my life, right now, or in the very near future?
Not its features, but its actual use for me. Its use for you. And second, the really killer question, how much would I voluntarily be willing to pay for this item if I were buying it, say, directly from someone who just made it, and I had absolutely no idea what the MSRP was or if it was on sale?
Wow. Okay, so you're forcing yourself to establish your own personal, non-negotiable threshold of worth for that specific object's function in your life. You set the value internally first.
Yes.
You become the appraiser of your own needs. And here's the decision rule. If the actual sticker price you then look at, even the discounted sale price, is higher than the internal value you just determined for yourself. You walked away,
Right.
no matter how big the supposed discount is.
The purchase is immediately rejected. Doesn't matter if it's 50% off, 70% off. If the asking price exceeds your personal utility valuation, it's a no-go. This is where the power dynamic shifts entirely back to you, the consumer. You're operating by your rules, not theirs. This is where that Instant Pot anecdote from the sources becomes so incredibly instructive, isn't it? Because this wasn't some trivial item. It's a popular gadget, lots of people love them, and it was genuinely significantly discounted.
Exactly. The perfect case study of this principle in action.
So walk us through that internal struggle, that calculation.
Okay, so the sources detailed that this Instant Pot, probably usually retailing around $150 or maybe more, was on a major sale. The price was down to $90.
Which objectively sounds like a pretty great deal for a multi-cooker like that.
Yeah.
Most people would probably jump on that, right?
Absolutely. For many people, $90 would feel like a must-buy, a no-brainer price point for a kitchen gadget with that many functions. But the author, practicing this discipline, paused. They stopped and deliberately performed that internal utility calculation we just described.
So ignoring the $150 MSRP and the $90 sale price for a moment.
How often would I realistically use this specific appliance? What meals would I make in it? How does that compare to my existing cooking methods, my oven, my stovetop, my slow cooker? What actual problem does it solve for me?
They're grounding it in their actual life, not the idealized perfect meals in minutes marketing fantasy.
Precisely. They're calculating the marginal convenience gain for their specific circumstances. And based on that honest assessment of their lifestyle, their cooking habits, their projected usage, what did they determine?
What was their internal valuation? Their personal ceiling of worth?
They determined that the absolute maximum true value they could assign to the convenience this specific device offered them was $60. $60 was their number.
Okay, so the item is objectively discounted from maybe $150 down to $90. That's a $60 markdown, a 40% discount. Looks great on
Oh,
paper.
it's fantastic on paper. But
But $90, the sale price, was still $30 more than their internally determined maximum utility value of $60.
exactly. And therefore,
Purchase rejected. They walked away from the $90 Instant Pot.
that's the masterful demonstration of self-command right there. It shows crystal clear that the purchase decision was based entirely on an internally established standard of value, not on an external market-driven discount percentage.
Most people would have fixated on the $60 they saved compared to the MSRP anchor.
But the author fixated on the $30 they would have wasted by paying more than their personal utility threshold. Did a complete reversal of focus. That, arguably, is the highest form of financial discipline in a consumer context. It's freedom from the cognitive bias itself.
Okay, I get the principle. But applying that level of rigorous analysis to every single potential purchase, especially small ones, sounds, well, exhausting. Is the point that you have to struggle through this every time?
That's a fair point.
Mhm.
The initial effort, especially when you're first building this mental muscle, is high. It takes conscious effort, but the goal isn't perpetual struggle.
What's the goal then?
Habit formation. Like exercising any muscle. By consistently practicing this internal valuation exercise, even just quickly, mentally, for smaller items, you are literally retraining your brain. You're weakening the automatic stimulus response link between seeing a sale sign and feeling the urge to buy.
And strengthening the link between seeing an item and asking, what's its actual worth to me?
Exactly. Over time, your default response begins to shift. It becomes more automatic, more intuitive. You stop instinctively asking, how much did I save compared to the MSRP? And you start instinctively asking, how much is this genuinely worth to the quality and function of my life?
And that reflex, once developed, provides that immediate intuitive self-command without the constant exhausting analysis.
That's the idea. It becomes your new default setting. You build the mental moat, and then maintaining it becomes much less effortful.
All right, so we've got the philosophical underpinning, temperance, self-command. We've got the core technique, internal utility valuation. Now, let's get really practical for everyone listening. The sources lay out a kind of anti-temptation toolkit, right? Specific strategies we can use.
Yeah, a set of concrete tactics to protect your wallet and, just as importantly, your mental space from these pervasive influences. There are 5 key strategies highlighted.
Okay, strategy number 1. Strategy 1 is arguably the simplest and often the most powerful because it acknowledges basic human fallibility. It is avoid the battlefield. Avoid the battlefield, meaning just don't go where the temptations are.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
If, through self-awareness that certain environments or situations like browsing sale websites just to look or wandering aimlessly through a mall reliably trigger your scarcity bias or impulse buying.
Then the smartest move is just don't do it.
Preemptive retreat. It's not weakness, it's tactical intelligence. Recognize where you're vulnerable and create hard rules for yourself to avoid those specific triggers. So, practical examples. Don't browse Amazon on Prime Day just to see what's out there if you know you'll end up buying stuff. Exactly. Or don't walk into a big box store like Target or Costco without a precise written shopping list for things you actually need right now. Stick to the list.
It's basically an act of self-preservation for your bank account and your sanity.
It really is. Because if you remove the stimulus, if you're not physically seeing the flashing countdown timer or the big red 70% off sign, then the cognitive machinery of FOMO and scarcity bias never even gets activated.
You don't have to fight the urge if the urge is never triggered.
Precisely. We often feel this pressure, maybe from society, to constantly test our willpower. But the sources suggest the truly disciplined person often isn't the one with iron willpower, but the one who intelligently structures their environment to minimize the need for willpower in the first place. It saves money, and it saves the mental effort of resistance.
Okay, avoid the battlefield if possible. Makes sense. Strategy number 2.
Strategy 2 uses information as a direct weapon against that anchor effect we talked about. It's historical price checking.
Using data. The sources specifically mention tools like camelcamelcamel.com for tracking Amazon prices.
Yeah, that's a well-known example for Amazon. But the principle applies much more broadly. There are other browser extensions and websites that track price histories for various retailers. The key is leveraging historical data.
How does this help fight the anchor?
Well, remember, the anchor works by making the current sale price look amazing compared to the often inflated MSRP or list price. Historical price data cuts right through that illusion. When a retailer screams, deeply discounted, was $100, now only $50. Well, a quick check on a price history tool might reveal the truth. Often, you'll see that the item's actually been selling for $55 or $60 for the last 6 or 9 months. Maybe it briefly touched $100 once, ages ago, or maybe never.
So the was $100 is basically fiction, or at least highly misleading?
Exactly. And the now $50 isn't some amazing once-in-a-lifetime deal. It's maybe only slightly lower than its average recent selling price. That massive discount from the inflated anchor just collapses instantly when confronted with real data.
The psychological impact of realizing that must be huge.
It's profound. The urgency just evaporates, the FOMO gets neutralized, because you suddenly realize you're not about to miss out on some fleeting, incredible bargain. You're just looking at roughly the real stable market price for that item.
It takes away the retailer's power to manufacture that sense of crisis, that buy now or regret it feeling, completely. It shifts the narrative in your head from, scarcity, must act now, back to calm, rational assessment. Okay, this is the typically price. Do I actually need this item, and is it worth $50 of my money? I have time to think. Data brings calm to the marketing storm. Love that. Okay, strategy 3 requires a bit more active mental engagement.
Yeah, this one's about engaging your critical thinking skills directly with the marketing itself. It's analyzing advertising critically.
So not just passively consuming ads, but actively trying to deconstruct them.
Exactly. It means deliberately looking for the flaws, the hidden trade-offs, the potentially negative consequences that the ad is trying desperately to gloss over. Questioning the convenience being promised, forcing a kind of psychological break in the trance the ad is trying to induce.
How do you do that in practice?
It's about intentionally finding the but. Marketing always presents an idealized fantasy. This product will make your life effortlessly easy or beautiful or connected. Your job is to find the but. Focus on the potential hassle, the inconvenience, the downside, even the slightly disturbing aspects that the glossy ad conveniently omits.
This reminds me of that really specific, powerful anecdote from the sources about resisting the Amazon echo. It wasn't price checking that stopped the purchase, right? Even though it was heavily discounted.
No, exactly. The story goes the echo was on sale, maybe down from $180 to $90, a significant drop. But the author was watching the promotional video or commercial.
Showing the happy family using it, making life easy.
Yeah, the typical idyllic scene. But something specific jarred the author. There was a subtle moment where a small child in the ad says goodbye to the Echo device itself, treating it almost like a person, like a necessary sentient companion.
Okay. That's a bit unsettling.
And that specific flicker of psychological discomfort, the recognition of potentially unhealthy dependency, or just the sheer invasiveness of that technology becoming so embedded, that was what snapped them out of the what a great deal mindset. It broke the acquisition trance.
So the strategy is to actively look for that creepy factor or the hassle factor.
Yes, find the internal red flag. The point isn't necessarily to demonize the product outright, but to intentionally counterbalance the marketing fantasy by focusing on the potential future annoyance, the privacy trade-off you're making, the minor ways it might erode your self-reliance or skills. Find the friction the ad tries to hide.
Ground yourself in the potential downsides, which leads perfectly into strategy number 4, which is a fantastic way to systematically find those downsides. The power of negative reviews. Okay, this sounds counterintuitive. Most people focus on the 4- and 5-star reviews to convince themselves to buy.
Right. And marketers love that. The glowing reviews reinforce the fantasy they've built. This strategy flips it. You deliberately seek out and read the 1-star and 2-star reviews.
You intentionally look for what went wrong for other people.
Yes. Think of it as preemptive disappointment inoculation. The 1-star reviews are where you find the reality behind the marketing gloss. They talk about the cheap plastic breaking, the terrible battery life, the frustrating software glitches, the customer service nightmares, the unexpected ways the product failed.
So reading those grounds you in the potential for real-world frustration before you spend the money.
Exactly. It dramatically shifts your emotional focus. Instead of being pulled forward by the anticipated high of acquiring the deal, you're forced to confront the potential low of user frustration, disappointment, and regret after the purchase. It tempers the acquisition drive significantly.
If you can mentally accept the potential negative realities before buying, you're much less likely to be swept away by the immediate allure of the discount price.
You've balanced the scales. You've seen both sides, not just the rosy picture the seller wants you to see.
Okay, avoid the battlefield, historical price check, analyze ads critically, read negative reviews. What's the 5th strategy? This one felt like it elevated the discussion.
It does. Strategy 5 moves beyond just saving money and touches on a deeper philosophical imperative, especially relevant today. It's guarding privacy, which the sources frame as an essential act of modern autonomy, modern self-command.
And this came up specifically with the Amazon Echo example again, right?
Yes. The sources indicate that the author's strongest ultimate motivator for rejecting that $90 Echo wasn't the $30 difference from the utility value, but the fundamental cost to their personal space and independence.
That privacy cost.
The privacy cost. This reflects a really profound understanding that some conveniences demand a price far greater than mere currency. The very nature of passive surveillance, having a device in your most private spaces that is always listening, always potentially recording, always collecting data on your conversations, your habits, your life.
That feels like the absolute antithesis of self-command or personal sovereignty.
It really is. It brings that abstract philosophical concept of freedom right down into the physical reality of your own home, your bedroom, your kitchen. Are you willing to trade long-term peace of mind, data security, and a sense of sanctuary for the marginal convenience of asking a cylinder about the weather forecast?
Framed that way, the trade-off seems wildly unbalanced, and the sources draw clear parallels to other known vulnerabilities we're more familiar with, like how easily laptop webcams or microphones can be compromised and used for spying. The warning is stark. We need to be deeply, profoundly wary of any technology that aggressively pushes convenience at the cost of fundamental privacy and freedom. So the true price of that Echo wasn't $90.
The true price was a subtle, perhaps incremental, but ultimately immeasurable sacrifice of privacy, autonomy, and mental peace. And that's a currency you can't easily earn back once it's spent.
So choosing not to adopt certain technologies, even when they're popular, affordable, heavily marketed, becomes what?
It becomes a conscious act of independence, a deliberate statement. You're saying, my mental space, my physical space, my private life, these things are sovereign. They are under my command, and they are not up for sale, not even at 50% off. It really forces you, the modern consumer, to grapple with that question. What is the real long-term emotional and psychological cost of inviting a potential surveillance node into your most private sanctuary? It's a crucial question. If the ancient Stoics emphasized freedom from dependence on external luxuries, perhaps modern temperance requires freedom from dependence on intrusive, data-hungry connectivity. The financial decision to buy or not to buy becomes the gateway to defending a much larger, more fundamental claim on your own self-reliance and autonomy. #tagoutro.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive has really taken us on a journey, hasn't it? We've gone from the simple sticker price on a sale item through the weeds of cognitive biases like anchoring and FOMO,
Explore the philosophical connection to Stoic temperance and self-command.
covered practical valuation techniques like the Instant Pot example, and landed on this crucial toolkit for resistance and even guarding our privacy.
It covers a lot of ground, but hopefully it connects in a practical way. We really want to leave you, our listeners, with 2 crystal clear core takeaways from all of this.
Okay, takeaway number 1.
Constantly revisit and internalize the true definition of saving in this context. Real, meaningful saving is non-consumption of the unnecessary. The discipline, the win, is often found in walking away, regardless of how attractive the retailer makes the deal look.
Save 100% by not buying. Got it. And the second takeaway.
Recognize that resisting these pervasive impulses to buy isn't just about being good with money in a narrow sense. It's an active, ongoing practice, a daily discipline. And that discipline is what leads directly to greater personal autonomy, greater self-command.
By mastering these small impulses, you limit the external world's control over your attention, your time, and ultimately your resources. You take back the reins.
Exactly. We started this whole deep dive with that great, slightly ironic premise about saving 100%. So let's end with a final thought, a provocation, designed to really cement the power of internal valuation over external price tags.
Okay, give us something to chew on. Think about this hypothetical scenario. Imagine you're walking through a kind of virtual marketplace. Every single item is available, but there's a catch. All the prices are hidden. No MSRPs, no discount stickers, no price tags at all. Okay, prices are invisible. How to buy anything?
You have to make a bid. For each item you encounter, you have to decide, based purely on its actual current realistic utility in your life right now, how much you're willing to pay for it. Your internal valuation becomes your bid.
So I'm forced to use that utility calculation we talked about for everything.
Right.
For everything. Now, the provocative questions are these. In that price-hidden market, how many items that you currently own or are tempted to buy would you actually place a winning bid on? How many things would you truly value enough to purchase based solely on their function for you? That's a sobering question. Probably fewer than I think. And perhaps the even more important follow-up question for your everyday life. How much of your precious cognitive energy or focus, your attention, your limited daily mental bandwidth is currently being consumed, maybe even wasted, negotiating prices, chasing deals, and thinking about acquiring things that you don't actually need or wouldn't value highly in that price-hidden market, just because they're presented as a fleeting opportunity?
Purely because the sale itself grabs your attention. Think about reclaiming that energy, reclaiming that command over your focus.
That's a powerful place to leave it. Reclaim the energy. Reclaim the command.
Absolutely. Until next time, we really hope this deep dive helped you focus your resources, both financial and mental, on what truly matters most to you. We'll see you soon.
Welcome to The Debate. Our focus today is on the psychological battlefield of retail, specifically the economic dynamic of the sale. We're drawing heavily from the insights in the illusory savings of sales to confront a deeply uncomfortable truth, that buying something on discount feels like saving money, when in fact it's merely spending less.
Right, and that brings us to our core tension. The real question is this: is the only reliable and, I guess, philosophically sound method for achieving true financial discipline to practice total non-consumption and avoidance? Or can a person actually achieve financial mastery through, say, strategic, analytical engagement with sales and turn those apparent savings into genuine value?
Exactly. And I'll be arguing that complete avoidance, non-consumption, is the necessary, ultimate, and frankly the only safe expression of financial discipline. It's the only way to save 100%.
And I'm going to come at this from a different perspective. While I absolutely agree that sales are manipulative psychological traps, I maintain that true mastery is demonstrated not by retreat, but by strategic engagement. The material gives us these analytical tools. I think of them as mental armor that allow a disciplined person to master the system and acquire what they truly need. Total avoidance is often impractical, and, at the end of the day, it's a failure of intellectual self-control.
I have to disagree strongly with that framing. The core math, I think, reveals why avoidance is the superior path. The entire psychological deception hinges on this concept of the MSRP, the manufacturer's suggested retail price. This price is usually inflated, and it's designed to act as an anchoring effect. It's a cognitive bias that just fixes your mind on this high cost, making any discount seem like a victory.
Sure. The anchor is the trap.
It is. Look, if a jacket that's priced at $200 is marked down to $100, the consumer goes around boasting they saved $100. But that is a mirage. It is still a $100 expenditure that did not exist before the sale. You haven't added to your wealth. You've merely spent less than the store suggested you might spend. My position is rooted in a discipline I'd call financial stoicism. Resistance to the sale. It isn't about mere frugality. It's about sovereignty, about preserving mental clarity and achieving that 100% saving. So the primary, most effective strategy has to be to avoid the battlefield entirely.
That's a powerful indictment of the retail system, and look, I agree with your assessment of the anchoring manipulation. I do. However, to suggest total abstinence is the only path to discipline, that really undervalues our capacity for reasoned analysis. We aren't arguing for blind consumption here. We are arguing for informed choice. The source material warns us about these pitfalls, but, and this is crucial, it simultaneously hands us the map to navigate them. You mentioned the MSRP anchor. Well, the author explicitly describes techniques to neutralize it. For instance, using historical price-checking tools to look past the current retail environment and see an item's real price history. And more importantly, they engage in personal utility estimation, like valuing the Instant Pot at $60 and then refusing the $90 sale price. These are tools of intellectual mastery, not avoidance. The philosophical basis here isn't financial stoicism, which, can sometimes border on minimalism. It's temperance. The true test of self-control is the ability to stand in front of temptation, analyze it, and walk away stronger, only acquiring value when the price aligns with your own rational criteria.
Okay, but let's focus on that independent assessment of value, because this is where I think the theory of strategic mastery really breaks down in the real world. I'm just not convinced by that line of reasoning, because you are still fundamentally tethered to the consumption matrix. You claim to disregard the MSRP, but how did you arrive at that $60 valuation for the Instant Pot? Even if you're using a tool like Camel, you're still just analyzing price history, which is based on the market's previous attempts to sell you something. The MSRP is designed to create an artificial desire. When you base your purchase on a percentage off that constructed anchor, you're still playing their game. You're just engaging in lesser spending. Why participate at all? Especially when we know true savings only occur when you keep 100% of your money, which happens when you don't buy what you don't need.
I disagree with that framing. I really do. The goal of using these techniques is not to validate the market. It's to establish a value floor that is entirely independent of the retailer's wishes. Let me detail how that $60 estimation works, because it's really the linchpin of strategic mastery. The process involves a critical analysis before you even see the sale. First, you assess the item's true utility. How often will I actually use this? If it's once a month, the value plummets compared to a daily use item. Second, you calculate the opportunity cost and the replacement cost. If the Instant Pot breaks, what's the cost of the next best alternative? And third, most importantly, you perform a comparative analysis. You ask yourself, how much would I voluntarily pay for this if I saw it on the street with no price tag? If I can get a similar, maybe less branded appliance for $40, then the brand name item is only worth maybe $20 more.
So $60 total. The decision to refuse the $90 sale price, even when it's heavily discounted, it proves that the author successfully re-anchored their own mind. That is a rational act of disciplined expenditure, and that's a necessary part of acquiring utility in life. It is not capitulation.
But how well do these methods actually work when you're faced with the immense psychological pressures of the sale environment? I mean, you champion critical engagement, but I maintain that avoidance is simply the most reliable, the most efficient way to preserve your mental clarity, given the power of the cognitive biases we both acknowledge. Let's look at the example of the Amazon Echo near purchase. This is a clear moment in the material that demonstrates the failure of these analytical tools against raw psychological manipulation. The Echo was 50% off, a massive discount designed to trigger FOMO, the scarcity bias. Now, despite the author having all their analytical tools ready, they were drawn into what they describe as a purchasing trance. They were ready to click buy. The analysis failed. So what broke the spell? It wasn't a price checker. It was an emotional rupture. The discomfort from his young daughter saying goodbye to this passive surveillance device.
The sheer cognitive load required to resist a sale like that just means that avoidance is a far superior long-term strategy. The risk of yielding is simply too high when the goal is 100% savings.
You're focusing on that one emotional moment,
but I think you're missing the context. The author was already engaged in a full anti-temptation strategy, which includes intellectual strategies like reading negative reviews, deliberately looking for flaws, analyzing the advertising critically. That emotional moment was the final hammer blow, yes, but the analytical framework had already primed him to recognize the trap he was in. The disciplined individual doesn't avoid the marketplace out of fear. They confront it with superior knowledge. To avoid the battlefield entirely is just a defensive measure. Intellectual mastery, the ability to deploy these tools even when the pressure is high, that is the true expression of self-control. He didn't avoid prime day deals, he processed them, analyzed them, and ultimately rejected them based on rigorous, pre-established criteria. That intellectual friction is what strengthens discipline.
Okay, even if we grant that sophisticated analysis can work occasionally, we have to consider the higher cost that's inherent in engaging with this system. And this, for me, pushes the argument right back toward total avoidance. I'm talking about the cost of trading your independence and your data for a temporary discount. Sales, especially with tech, are often subsidized by data collection. The Amazon Echo is the perfect example because it links the financial transaction directly to a rejection of the device as a passive surveillance device. When you enter that environment, you're not just risking cash, you're risking the asset of your data, your tracking history, your attention, and the retailer monetizes all of it. So the saving from the sale is immediately offset by the financial value of the data you're giving up, making the saving truly illusory.
Shunning these sales preserves your money, yes, but also your sovereignty over your personal data, which is a much higher form of saving, I'd argue.
I absolutely agree that data harvesting and privacy are critical. They introduce a profound financial cost that has to be factored in. However, conflating the financial discipline required for all sales with the ethical rejection of specific surveillance technology, I think it muddies the definition of financial sovereignty a bit. My argument is that strategic engagement still allows for success on both fronts. The Instant Pot refusal, where the authors saved $90 by sticking to their $60 valuation, that was based purely on financial calculation. It was separate from the rejection of surveillance. The discipline needed to reject a utility item because it fails a utility price test is distinct from the discipline needed to reject a device that fails an ethical freedom test. The crucial point for me is that in both cases, the individual is exercising analytical choice and resistance, not just relying on blind, fear-based avoidance.
But why even introduce the risk of calculation fatigue and psychological manipulation when the simplest, most effective solution is just to walk away? The fact remains that MSRP is a manipulative construct designed to encourage unnecessary spending. All sale purchases are still expenditures, which detract from true saving. As the Stoics taught, freedom is the prize of self-control, and that freedom is most reliably preserved by a strict adherence to non-consumption.
And I'll reaffirm that the very tools the source material provides, price checking, utility assessment, critical analysis, they enable the disciplined consumer to bypass those traps and achieve genuine value when it's necessary. Discipline is not about a fear-based retreat. It means possessing the intellectual capacity for strategic engagement, allowing you to acquire what you need without succumbing to the illusion. Mastery lies in engaging the complexity and winning, not in running from the fight.
It's clear that the material presents compelling evidence for both sides, for the necessity of total abstinence, and for the possibility of rigorous self-control through analysis.
Indeed. And ultimately, the source material really invites the listener to decide which path, retreat or rigorous engagement, offers the most reliable route to their own financial and intellectual sovereignty.